Hi Tarot Trainees. I'm going to talk a little bit today about deepening your understanding of the deck because we've come to that stage now where we've actually looked through all of the cards and we have sort of a working understanding of the basis for each part of the deck, the majors, the minors and the court cards. So I think now it's time to move on to the inevitable truth that you are not going to get everything that you need to become a sufficient tarot reader through just listening to me or through just kind of having a look at the book that came with the deck. It's not going to work like that. There needs to be a bond, of course, between yourself and the cards that you're reading, and there needs to be a bond between you and the concept of tarot as a holistic tool. So I think that's very important, and I think that, just saying that is kind of, it can get a little bit abstract. I think the important thing is to give you some tools um, as a means of you moving forward on your own and kind of exploring the deck and becoming more comfortable with the deck on your own. So the first thing that I would say is when you bond with each individual card, and some cards are going to be easier to bond with and understand than other cards, of course, because they all reflect different situations or different parts of the spirit or personality. There is a certain method that I would say is pretty much tried and tested that you can use to help you to kind of break down each card as an individual entity. It's very easy to kind of look at the deck overall and state that yes, you've worked with it and you feel more comfortable with it, but your relationship with each individual card needs to be strong. And that's how you become a good reader, through strengthening your bond with each of the 78 cards. So the tried and tested method I'd say that you should use is sort of a three-step method for investigating and exploring each card in a slightly different way. And the method goes by a few different names, but I like to call it intuitive, academic, and integrated learning of each card. And what I mean by that is that, first of all, you need to look at the card and learn it intuitively. So you look at it and you explore how it makes you feel. You explore how the symbols and the colours and the figures and the situations and ideas and places within each card make you feel, and what they mean and represent for you. Because, of course, symbology is a very complex language. Of course, we have our accepted societal ideas of what a symbol, such as a cup, for example, or a horse, or a woman and a child. We have our accepted societal standards for what each of those symbols mean, but we also have a big kind of back catalogue in our own mind and in our own psyche of what symbols mean to us on an individual basis because of the lives that we've led or the things that we perceive to be true about the nature of life. So, it's never going to be of it's never going to be paramount that you simply stop at reading the symbols in a societal context. It's always very important that you look at what a warrior on a horse means for you, or you look at what a certain object means to you, on a personal level too. So intuitive reading of the card is important, putting the book down and actually getting to grips with how each card makes you feel and how you break down and interpret the symbols within each card. Academic is obviously straightforward. It's what it says on the tin. It's learning from books. And that, I also feel, is a very important way of learning. And I've spoken about that in a former video when a subscriber asked me to discuss whether or not I felt you could learn tarot without looking at the books. And I said, that absolutely there needs to be a natural balance struck between intuitive learning, learning from here, and book learning, learning from up here. So, I do think that both are vitally important, and I'll get on a little bit more to book study in a while. And the third and final part of the method for learning each card, integrated, which is just the word that I use. You can use any word you like, but I favour the word integrated because that third part of reading the card is all about going into it and accepting it as part of you and thinking about what it really does for you and the lesson that you can learn from it. I really think it's important, if you want to become an advanced reader and if you want to work on really helping your querents and bringing them healing and bringing them guidance, it's very important that you have an emotional bond with each card and that you understand the way in which it speaks to you and the lessons which you can learn from it. So yeah, basically the superficial, intuitive reading of the symbols, and then the deeper, kind of more ingrained, more soul-based method of integrating yourself with that card. And then academic is for the book study. So I would say that those three methods need to be introduced to some level when you're looking at each card individually, and that will help you to strengthen the bond you have with each card and the understanding that you have of each card. The way that you can go about learning the integration side of study is mainly through things like path working. or meditations and visualizations, that kind of thing. So once you've actually broken down what the symbology means to you on a personal level, how the card makes you feel as a kind of gut reaction, and then you've gone on to reading what the book has to say about it, doing the integrated part of the method will involve getting yourself into a quiet space where you're not going to be interrupted, getting to into a contemplative state, and allow yourself just that stillness and that time to explore the card on a very deep emotional or spiritual level. And normally that involves imagining that you are stepping into the card. That's kind of how path working works with tarot. So what you'll do is you will work out a method whereby you can get yourself into the meditative state, focusing on the card. You can have your eyes open or closed for this, it's completely up to you. A lot of people favour open eye meditation, I certainly do. So if that's how you work, you do not need to close your eyes. You can leave your eyes open and focus on the card. Might help to do that in candlelight. However you kind of favour it, and then step into the card. So imagine, use your deep resources of imagination to open the card like a doorway and step into the world that the card is portraying for you. And path working will involve using the five senses, exploring how the card makes you feel in your five senses when you're actually in there in that world, walking around the environment, getting around the corners of the card. When you look at the environment and the circumstances that are going on in your tarot cards, you can only see that little window. Path working is about using the imagination to bridge that gap between what you see in the picture and what you imagine lies beyond in your mind. So it's very important to kind of step into the card and walk around. And another reason that path working is so important when it comes to learning to integrate yourself with the meaning of the card is that you're giving the figures a chance to speak to you too. There are a lot of figures in the average tarot deck, and when you look at them, you get a sense of who they are and what they desire and what their plans are and what their opinions are on things. So I think it's always helpful with path working when you give yourself that chance to step into the card. You're actually giving yourself a chance to have a dialogue with the Queen of Swords. You may come across her in your path working. You may be making your way towards her as a kind of journey or pilgrimage of sorts, and when you meet her, you may ask her to give you some advice, or you may ask her a question and see how she answers. So path working, Kim Huggins suggests in Tarot 101, in fact, that path working should be done 3 times with each card. I think that is probably good advice. I think if tarot becomes a passion, then 3 times for each card won't actually seem like a lot. In fact, it's something that you'll probably want to revisit and explore for the rest of your life if tarot becomes kind of a staple for how you practice or how you deal with issues or how you guide other people or help other people. I think path working probably will become something that you wish to do with some regularity. And I must admit to being terribly bad at fitting time in for path working, but I do like to think that tarot does absorb itself into my life in ways in which when I come across a certain situation or a certain person, I think of a tarot card, and that kind of allows me a little bit of a path working exercise too, because it's almost like just through living my life I am getting around those unseen corners in those cards and kind of doing some path working of my own. So yeah, if you want some more information about how to path work, I mean, if you're familiar with meditation, guided visualization, anything like that, then you'll probably have a sense of what I mean by grounding yourself, getting yourself into the meditative state, and then exploring something with your imagination. But if you do need more information or you feel lost and you're not quite sure what I mean by path working, then just comment below and let me know and I'll try to clarify for you. And moving on from the 3 ways of reading a card, journaling, as I mentioned in the first part of this tarot trainee course, is going to be vital to your development as a reader, and I can't stress that enough. It's very important for you to keep a regular record of what you're learning, the insights that you're getting, the perceptions that you have of tarot and how they're changing, even how you feel about the course of study, just emotionally, just from a personal perspective, how you're fitting it into your schedule, how you're fitting it into your life. And I think that having a tarot journal can be a really great way of bringing some creative spirit to the proceedings, definitely. I think it just makes it all that more enjoyable, and I think that it gives you a chance to have this little platform which is just about tarot, and it's just sort of between you and the book, and you can really build up your knowledge base and have a look back after 3 months, after 6 months, after a year, and just marvel at how far you've progressed. I think it really gives you a chance to give yourself credit, and it gives you a chance to, almost in the same way as you would keep a dedicated book of shadows, I suppose, gives you a chance to track your progress and just have a look at what worked and what didn't and what you might like to experiment with. Journaling is also really good for things like daily draws. If you want to do a daily draw to kind of explore the cards that way, a lot of tarot readers and tarot students do that. Correspondences or interpreting symbols, any sort of fresh perceptions or ideas you have about each card, breaking the cards down, kind of just writing about the colour, the figures, the locations of each card, and kind of what they mean to you on a personally symbolic basis. I think scrapping is a great idea with the tarot journal if you want to take it in that way. You could kind of make your own pictorial representations of what each card means to you emotionally or spiritually. You could give each card a certain energy. You can use collage to kind of tap into your own very deep personal feelings about what each card represents. And journaling is also fun for things like wish lists and writing lists of the decks that you want to work with, or indeed kind of breaking down your study of a few different decks. If you are exploring decks and they're very different and their meanings are very different, you can kind of get through that by sectioning off certain parts of the journal for different decks and that kind of thing. So I think it can also be quite light-hearted, and it can give you a chance to, just explore where you want to go with it and make it into your own little platform. Practice readings are invaluable. I can't stress that enough. And, I think practicing is something that you can do on your own to an extent. And I think it's actually quite good to do it on your own, because you need to be your own best cheerleader when it comes to tarot. And for quite some time, not only will you not have the confidence to give a reading to somebody else, but also when you give a reading to somebody else, somebody who's in your life, you kind of feel that the reading needs to be authentic and the reading needs to be useful, and the person getting the reading needs to actually be having a reading. And when you're not that great and you kind of forget the meanings and you're kind of picking it up as you go along and kind of trying to thread things together, but you're not proficient yet, the reading that you could give if you were doing it in a serious reading setting is not going to be all that and a bag of chips. Let's face it, you are still learning, and that's fine. So really, you don't want to be giving readings to friends and family straight away as a kind of real reading for real guidance, because the messages and the information in tarot is so rich that you kind of don't really want to waste an opportunity to read for your friend, your boyfriend, your mum, whoever, when you're still very much in a learning stage. So practicing on your own can be a great thing, and it can give you that chance to have that inner dialogue with yourself, talk yourself through it, have a laugh at yourself when you get things wrong and that kind of stuff. I also think that talking out loud when you're practicing readings is incredibly important. I can't stress that enough. When you lay out some cards for a kind of pretend querent, it's very important for you to talk out loud. So have some time alone where you're not going to feel like awkward talking out loud or anything like that, and really give yourself a chance to listen to your voice, listen to the pace, listen to what you're saying about each card, concentrate on how much time you're spending talking about each card. Give yourself a chance to write down notes afterwards about the cards that you did not feel that you were comfortable with, that you didn't have much to say on, so that you can then go back to those cards as areas of study that you need further progression with. Just listening to yourself out loud can give yourself such a sense of how far you've come and the confidence level that you are always trying to gain and gain and gain as you progress. So yeah, I do think kind of pretending needs to be like role playing. You really need to get into the mode of it. Imagine that there is somebody in front of you. Convey certain emotions. Use pauses for effect, not dramatic or theatrical effect. I mean effect in terms of allowing the querent to think, allowing the querent to absorb. Don't go at a million miles an hour. Make sure that you give those pauses and you give those opportunities for reflection. And just, yeah, have a look at how confident you are with each card, and just note down anywhere in which you fell short. If you're looking for a more creative way to practice readings, I would also suggest the fictional character technique, which I think is fantastic. If you're reading a book or you are watching a film or watching a series at the moment, just select one of the characters. It doesn't have to be the main protagonist. In fact, it's probably more useful if it's one of those characters that's on the sidelines, that you're not actually entirely sure what their situation is or what their feelings are on a particular circumstance, but they're there in the series or in the book. And I think it's great actually to imagine that you are reading the cards for them, because you're already aware of their situation, you're already aware of the life that they live. You can draw cards to convey the way they should act in a certain situation, maybe to convey the energies of other people and how that's influencing them. You can really go deep because you're already invested into the story, so it makes it so much easier to pretend. if you can imagine that you are reading for sort of a well-loved fictional character, or even a character that you're not really sure about and you would like to explore, just gives you a chance to really kickstart your imagination, I think. The other thing I was going to mention, and I wasn't sure if I was really going to mention this or not, because I think for a lot of people it might not seem like something that you need to do. But when I first started about a year and a half ago to get massively back into tarot and to kind of see it as a central spoke of my learning for spirituality and well-being, but also as something that I wanted to do for others, I kind of convinced myself that I needed to get a reading or two in order to kind of experience what it's like having the shoe on the other foot, and to experience what it's like actually reading card interpretations that were meant for me, meant for my situation. Because I think it's easy, first of all, it's easy to dish it out, but not quite so easy to take it. Tarot readings can be very challenging. They can make you think about things in a very different way. They can give you a totally different spin, a totally different perspective. So you need to be able to understand that when you are putting a tarot querent through their paces with challenging messages from tarot, or asking them to think of things differently, you need to understand what that's like, and you need to be thinking about what that's like so that you can empathise. Another reason I'd say it's great to have readings from other people is to benchmark your own progress and to think about the kind of reader that you want to be yourself. Not only I think is it important sometimes to support other readers who've put the time and the effort in, and they now kind of can do this at an advanced level, but I think it's very important to be able to benchmark your own progress, and that's one thing that I love about getting the occasional reading from another reader, is so that I can look at how they do things, I can look at the different messages that they've taken from the cards, I can maybe look at the different spreads they use, the positions they've used, the angle at which they've chosen to come at it, and compare that with my own progress. And just kind of, it really just opens my eyes and it gets me thinking. I think it really deepens my appreciation for tarot to have the occasional reading from somebody else. So when you're looking for a reader, if you do decide to get a reading, make sure you choose somebody whose profile details kind of resonate with what you're looking for, or whose advert in the paper or whatever kind of resonates with what you're after. If you're after tarot for healing and self-exploration, maybe check that somebody is in line with that idea. If you're looking for a tarot reader who's going to be tapping into psychic intuition in order to divine the future, then, make sure that you look for a reader who provides that. So yeah, I think that could be helpful for some people, maybe not for others. And with regard to what I was saying at the beginning of this video about the use of books and the academic segment of studying each card, I know I mentioned this in a former video, but I think that it could stand to be stressed again. Make sure that you maximise your resources and expand your resources. I think if you get a really great book to go along with the deck at first, then you will have a great time with that book. If it's written in a way that's accessible, in a way that speaks to you, then you can make notes on it. It can become really dog-eared, you can split the spine and just have a really great time with it. But I still think it's very important to compare and contrast resources, definitely, and have a look at what other people are saying, and have a look online as well. Just search card definitions and see what bloggers are saying about card definitions, that kind of thing, so that you have a broad overview of different adjectives that could be used to describe the energies of the card, different ways in which the symbology has been interpreted that you may not have thought of. And remember, you don't have to be a sponge. You don't have to pick up every single piece of information you read in every single book or on every single website and kind of hold it close to your heart and memorise it. That's not the point. The point is to go shopping, pick out what you like. Enjoy the flavours of different produce from different resources, go to different shops, pick up what you like, mix and match, find what works for you. A tarot is a lot more like art than it is like maths, and I've said that before. It's all about blending and combining and finding the place where you're comfortable within the broad spectrum of a card's interpretation. If we were just given one adjective per card and one way of reading the symbology of a card and one deck, I think a lot less people would be doing tarot. Tarot allows you a huge scope for exploration of the self and exploration of the deck, as an illustration of the human condition. So I think it's very important that you expand your knowledge base by taking on the opinions of a lot of other people who are very passionate about tarot, and kind of decide then where you fit on that spectrum. It's much, much easier to make a decision about where you feel comfortable with a card's interpretation once you've kind of looked at where other people fall on that spectrum and what other people think about a specific card. Also, I think that when you are beginning to experiment with spreads, and there is going to be a lesson coming up on spreads that you can use, obviously, I think perhaps some of you by now have been experimenting with simple spreads like 3 card spreads, past, present, future, or maybe having a look at things like the Celtic cross and that kind of thing. But I will be giving you some of my own ideas, and there will be workshops for more advanced spreads as we go along as well. But I think when you are looking at experimenting with spreads at this very early stage, try and have a look at the holistic overview of the spread, because at this point in time when you're learning tarot, it's very easy to look at a spread and home in on each card individually and interpret that card and then move on to the next. But what's important when you begin to progress to an intermediate level with tarot is that you feel fully comfortable with standing back and giving an overview of the energy or the feeling of the entire spread. Because the spread itself works with a holistic nature to it. You don't just take every card in isolation, you have a look at the overall energy. And I'll talk a little bit about how I do that for myself in a later video, I should imagine. But basically what you're really looking for is predominance and omission. So if you stand back and you have a look at the spread overall, have a look at what predominates. You know, maybe there are a great deal of cards from the suit of pentacles, which could convey that the spread has a very earthy energy to it. So it's about practicality, stability, responsibility, physical and material needs. Maybe it's about work, health, money. Maybe it's about working out how to tie up the loose ends so that everything can be ticking over quite nicely. It's about foundations, it's about roots, you know, that kind of thing. Or maybe if you have a high number of queens in a spread, what does that mean to you? For me, it could mean, for example, that there's a certain sense of identity and balance and coming into your own. That sense that you've learned enough to now progress to the stage of actually making your environment into the reality you want to see. If there are queens for a certain querent who's feeling a certain way about themselves, maybe low self-esteem, issues with empowerment, then I would probably see the energy of a high number of queens in the spread as a message to the querent that what they need is within them, and that all they need are the tools and the strategies in place to actually bring that inner power and dynamism to the surface. So when you're looking at a spread overall and you're looking at it holistically, if you like, you can see a lot more. And you can see how the cards fit together. I call it aspecting, other readers call it different things. But what I mean by aspecting is when you have a look at the relationship between the cards. When you look at a card on its own, not in a spread, but just on its own as its own animal, you will have an idea of what that card means to you, what that card represents, and the kind of energies and symbols that that card offers to you. When it's in a reading with 14 other cards, it's aspected, the energy is changed, you know, the energy flows in different directions. Not every single card has total prominence. Certain messages are going to leap out at you more. Certain messages are going to be changed by their relationship with the card next to them. The card that represents the future will be altered by its relationship with the card that represents the present, and then that represents the past. You know, different messages kind of tangle together, and although that may sound scary and complex at the moment, believe me, after a while it's going to become second nature to you. That is a fact, because it definitely has to me. I can't remember the last time I was stumped when I turned over a bunch of cards, because I've gotten to that stage now where I really have begun to pick up on prominence and omission. And remember, when you're looking at the cards that are prominent in a spread, the opposite of that is looking at the cards that are omitted, the cards that are absent. What is there an absence of in this spread? Is there an absence, for example, of masculine energy? Is there an absence of cards from the suit of cups, the suit that pertains to emotions and relationships, feelings? You know, looking at what's omitted can sometimes be just as revealing as looking at what is predominant. Is there a lack, for example, of major arcana cards? Do you feel that there's overall a lack of some kind of comforting energy? Is there a lot of conflict in the spread? Is there a lot of cards omitted that have to do with peace and stability and oneness? Have a look at what's missing as well as what's obviously there, and that will help you to read the spread in a much more holistic sense and get an overall view for its actual energy, because I think that's important. And finally, just a quick word about troubleshooting problem cards, which I did mention in a past video, but I'll just go over it here. You are not going to feel as bonded with every single card in the deck. But what I would say about the cards that you've come up against so far that you feel a real block with is that those cards are actually hidden treasures in a lot of ways. I think that the cards that you don't immediately feel a bond with, or that you kind of always feel this feeling of dread or annoyance or dissatisfaction when they come up in a spread or when they come up in learning, I think those cards can really help you to maybe visit some parts of yourself and explore some parts of your own psyche that you are not 100% integrated with or comfortable with. If that is too deep for the learning stages for some people, then you can take it or leave it, that's fine. But I know that with my own tarot journey, particularly when it began to deepen about 18 months ago, when I really, really hit the books hard and began my path working and so on, I know that some of the cards that I really felt uncomfortable with, the key ones at the moment I can think of are the King of Pentacles and the Hierophant, and the Queen of Pentacles as well. Some of those cards that I felt uncomfortable with reflected parts of my psyche that I needed to address. And I think one part of being a really great, well rounded tarot reader who's able to do their job, and in my case, I feel that my job is comforting, guiding, supporting, empowering. I think that it's really great when you get to an advanced level, when you look back over your experience with tarot and you realise that you have allowed the cards to alter you. Because as I said when I talked about integration, you need to allow the cards to do their emotional work on you. You would be a total hypocrite to ask a querent to use the messages of tarot and the guidance of tarot to inform and guide their own lives if you don't also do that yourself. There must be a bond there, and you must be prepared to learn the lessons that tarot has to give you too. So I think it's really important to troubleshoot, you know. The next time you come across a card that you feel really uncomfortable with, or maybe it's a set of cards, maybe you feel weirdly uncomfortable with all the aces or weirdly uncomfortable with all the kings, go back over the lessons from the Trainee Tarot course and have a look at what I've said about what aces represent or about what kings represent. And think about how that ties in with your own life, with your own sense of foreboding or your own sense of inability. Think about how it may tie into weakness for you or something like that. And see if tarot has any very profound messages to give to you about the way you live your own life and the way you relate to yourself and to other people. Because I think quite often those trouble cards are the diamonds in the rough. They are the cards that are really going to help you realise that not only are you putting your tarot study into practice, presumably so you can help other people on some level, but you're going to realise how fervently and profoundly tarot is going to affect you and it's going to help you. You know, it's not just there to comfort, it's also there to challenge. So I think a great way to get started on having that realization is to troubleshoot your problem cards, get them out, get them in front of you and get it over with. Explore what it is that makes you shudder when you see them, and I guarantee you that a lesson will be learned. Okay, that's all for now on deepening your understanding. If you have any questions or you need me for anything, my email is up on the main page. You can comment. You know, I'm going to carry on with it. I have a further 4 lessons to do, and after that, you should have some basic foundation understanding. And I hope that we can all go forward from there and I can show you some more complex spreads. I've really enjoyed doing it. I really hope that you are enjoying doing it too. And I'll be back in a few days' time with reversals, which is a whole new ball game. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Love to you all. Bye.